Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is being scared of competition. I did an episode probably at the time of this recording, probably about a year or so ago, talking about no competition, and, dealing with the idea and the concept of competition really being, within your biggest competition coming from within. But since that episode, I've been really kind of pushed to do this episode as well, because of some of the things that I see, and it's extremely frustrating because I think there are a lot of you who are scared of a little competition. As I mentioned in that episode, and I want to hammer home the point here as well, is that competition is a good thing. It's okay to compete. It's okay to be competitive. It's okay to be in competition with yourself. It's okay to be in competition with other people. It's okay to be in competition with the competition. It's okay to be in competition with your enemies to some degree. It's okay to be in competition with your coworkers. But don't be scared of a little competition. I'm reminded, when I think about competition, I'm reminded of the verse that Kendrick Lamar set the world on fire. If you're not familiar, a couple of years ago, Kendrick Lamar was actually on a song called Control. And his verse set the internet and the rap world on fire because not only was it a great verse, but he actually called out his competition, his fellow rappers, some of whom which he calls friends. He went at and called them out by name. Right? So when that happened, he let you know, like, hey, I'm here to compete. Here's the funny thing. People always refer to the Control verse, and it's not even Kendrick Lamar's song. The song belonged to Big Sean, right? The rapper Big Sean from Detroit. And Kendrick Lamar actually dissed Big Sean on his own song in the spirit of competition. Didn't mean any malice by it, but hey, I'm going at you. Now, Big Sean actually let the verse slide and put it on the song or whatever, without even going back and re-recording his verse to diss Kendrick. Shout out to LL. But the reason why I want to bring that up is because that is someone who wasn't necessarily afraid to compete against others, afraid to compete against his peers. I just think, like, now when I look around and I see a lot of people, particularly some of the younger generation, they're afraid to compete against each other. Like, and what I mean by compete, I mean like literally go at each other, not maliciously, not trying to harm anyone, not trying to be cordial, and not trying to be friends either. I mean, like, the thing I always think about when I think about competition, like, and I mentioned this before on, that previous podcast, and I'll say it on this podcast. This podcast isn't in any competition with anyone. The objective for me is to put out a dope episode every time I sit behind this microphone, every time I sit in front of this computer. That's it. I'm not up against, Joe Budden or Joe Rogan or Uncle Dolomite or Baylor or anybody else for that matter. That's not the competition. The competition is within me. And the thing is that I want this thing to grow, and I want it to get better each time that I put something out. I don't want to put anything half-assed out. But I'm all about competition. And I think it just stems from, like, when I was little. For me, like, I would compete with my friends. And I'll give you a perfect example. Like, I remember when I got to like 7th and 8th grade, some of my best friends were in my classes. And we would compete as far as grades were concerned. Now, I know this sounds a little bit nerdy, but I mean, this was what it was. I mean, it was the 80s. And so, like, if we took a test and Jay Fresh got an A on his test and the test came back, I would want to get an A on my test too, because we're in competition with each other. I don't want him to outshine me, and vice versa. And if he got an A and I got a C, then I know I have to work a little harder next time. It's just that simple. But I think we've gotten to a place where we're afraid to compete. And I think ultimately that hurts us, because if you're afraid to compete, it's going to be hard for you to gain any type of success in this world. And the reason why I say that is because everybody's competing. You're competing for jobs. You're competing for placement. You're competing for businesses. You're competing for eyes and ears on your podcast or whatever the case. You're in competition just about everywhere that you go, at almost every single turn. So if you're in a place where you feel like you don't have to compete, I mean, are you really being realistic with yourself? Because in reality, everything's a competition. Everything. But here's the thing. It's competition, but if you don't want to compete, everybody else is competing. When you were in school, or whether or not you were in high school or college, your end goal was to graduate, right? So you graduate. Now, once you graduate, you're in competition. You know, particularly now, and I say this to, any kids that are graduating from college this year, they're in competition with not just the kids in their class, but kids all across the United States. And they're in competition for jobs. You're literally competing against people that you will never, ever see. But it's a competition. And you have to be willing to push yourself and put your best foot forward. And you have to be willing to show that you are the best. Now, a lot of that starts with, self-belief, self-confidence. And if you don't have self-confidence, then I don't know what to tell you. Self-esteem, self-confidence, I mean, the words basically explain themselves. Self. I can't give you self-confidence. I can't give you self-esteem. To be honest, I can't even take away from your self-esteem if you're absorbing it and living it. So it's about competition. How good, how great are you willing to be? That's a question that everybody has to ask themselves. And I'm sure you guys got a chance to recognize and notice the cover art, right? The cover art, I put a picture of the two NBA legends, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Two legends, two all-time greats. In my personal opinion, two men who saved the NBA from falling off a cliff, literally and figuratively. And these guys were the two biggest competitors. But the thing that always struck me was something happened that I didn't even know that happened, that I found out years later. Well, just to give it a backstory, and it's not about sports, but you'll see where I'm going with this. When they were in college, their teams met in the national championship game. Bird was at Indiana State University. Magic was at Michigan State University. And so they went head to head, and, it was great. Magic and Michigan State won. This was like, 1979 or something like that. And, Magic was a different kind of player because he was 6'9". He could run the floor like a gazelle. He was a point guard. We had not seen, people that big to be that skilled with basketball. Larry Bird was a great shooter, and he could do just about everything. He wasn't the passer or the ball handler that Magic was, but he could do just about any and everything else. He could score from anywhere on the floor. And so they go into the NBA, and then their careers actually from college are intertwined. And then they have these epic battles in the NBA Finals in the 80s, Magic's Lakers against Larry Bird's Celtics. Midway through the 80s, both Magic and Larry Bird, at least I want to say throughout their entire careers, they both wore Converse sneakers. Now, Converse was the unofficial shoe of the NBA at the time. This is long before Air Jordans, right? And I saw in a documentary that now Magic and Bird had they'd had their battles already, right? And Converse wanted to shoot a commercial, and the commercial was being shot on Larry Bird's property. And Magic didn't want to shoot the commercial. Larry Bird didn't want to shoot the commercial. And these guys, from what I can tell, really didn't know each other off the basketball court. Because again, it's the 80s. So, it's not like they got each other's cell phone numbers and they're calling up each other. They were fierce competitors. And it was something that Magic said in a documentary, and Bird, in essence, repeated it, was they both were like, I don't want to do this commercial because I don't want him to know what I do. And Bird pretty much said, I don't want to do this commercial because I don't want him to get to know me. And there was a point in time where they were shooting a commercial, and this is the commercial was, there was a basketball court on Bird's property away from the house. And they had to go to the house. There was a break or whatever. They had to go to the house, and Bird's mom made lunch. And she invited Magic up for lunch. Well, Magic didn't want to turn the lady down. Bird really didn't want to have Magic over for lunch. But Bird's mom prepared the lunch, and she left the room. And the two of them had to sit in a room at a table and eat and have a conversation. And what Magic said about that conversation was that he learned so much more about Larry, a guy who he would rather tear Larry Bird's heart out and stomp it on the ground before he actually spent 5 minutes talking to him, or getting to know him. And the same for Bird, how he felt about Magic. But they both left from that set knowing a whole lot more about them other than their, athletic prowess or their basketball skills on the court. But they were such fierce competitors that they didn't want to even get close to each other, because if you get close to me, you know my strengths and you also know my weaknesses. And they had the mentality of, if you know me, then you know how I operate and you have something on me. And so they both thought, in the grand scheme of things, the more that they knew about each other, the less competitive they would be. And I found that to be interesting. And maybe it was just a sign of the times, but I could actually relate. As you guys know, I played, Little League football, played football from Little League all the way through high school into college. I was, pretty tight with my teammates, but the guys that we played against on other teams, I didn't want to know them. I didn't care nothing about them. I mean, I, read scouting reports or whatever like that. And I studied my opponents, studied their games and stuff, but no, I didn't want to know them. And so what Magic and Bird had to say about each other kind of resonated with me, because I'm like, you're my competition. Why would I want to know anything about you? Why would I want to be friends with you? And I think for me, that prevented me from being scared of competition, because I ran to competition. And the same for Magic and Bird. And I'm not saying that I'm Magic or Bird by any stretch of imagination, but I think what that taught me was, like, the less they know, the better it is for your level of competition. But I asked this question: how many of you are running away from competition? How many of you are up for a promotion at work, or could be battling a coworker for a promotion at work, but you're scared to compete? And maybe, just maybe, if you're friends with your competition, you think that that may help you out a little. Or maybe if you're friends or cool with the people who are going to ultimately be the decision makers as to whether or not you get that promotion. But does that affect adversely your competition, your level of competition? And my thing is this: if you're ready to compete, then just compete. You don't worry about making friends. You don't worry about whether or not you're going to hurt someone's feelings, because at the end of the day, competition is competition. It should bring out the best in you. You should not seek comfort in competing for something that you want to get. Because here's the thing, it's not going to be comfortable, particularly if it's something that you strive to get, or better yet, something that you feel that you deserve to get with your hard work. Now, if you just want it handed to you, yeah, then you're going to feel like not competing. But who wants to get something without competing for it? I certainly don't. I want to say that I earned it. And I think sometimes, particularly, we go through life and we're a little hesitant about it. Or maybe we want to get to know and be cool with the people that we're competing with. Me, I'm just not cut like that. I'm not cut from that cloth. And maybe I'm different. I don't know. Maybe you're different because you're here listening to this podcast. Maybe this is something that you need to hear. Maybe there's something that is within your peripheral that you can get, but you haven't found the motivation to go get. I mean, ultimately, you got to go get it. And let's just say that you're competing against a friend. How would you handle that? Competing against a friend. Listen, I can only speak for me, but I always wanted to compete against my friends. And it's nothing malicious, and it's nothing that, like, if it doesn't fall my way, that I'm going to be mad at that friend, because I truly believe that what's for me is for me, and what's for them is for them. And here's the thing. If I'm competing with a friend for something, let's say we're competing for a job, right? And maybe you're not competing with a friend for a job, but in this scenario, let's just say you and your friend are competing for that particular job. What's for you is for you. And, it's going to be obtained regardless by whomever is supposed to have it. So if your friend gets it, cool. You just weren't man or woman enough at that particular time to put forth the effort to do it. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you fell short. It's just went in the cards. And that doesn't mean that it won't be in the cards next time. But it's like, who wants to run away from that? You shouldn't want to compete against anybody. You should want to compete against your coworkers. You should want to compete against your friend. Man, there's nothing better than like beating your friends or something. Like, and I'll make it simple. Like, even something as simple as cards. You're familiar with the game Spades, right? Well, my wife and I, Sharice, we're undefeated in Spades. Like, we don't lose in Spades. And so we will play anybody in a game of Spades. Now, granted, we know each other so well because we've been together for so long that, we know how to play off of each other. But at the same time, you can only play the cards that you're dealt, right? So you might have a good hand, you might have a bad hand, but you find a way. You know what I'm saying? But we love competing against our friends, and we love talking trash, and that's one of the things that I love about her, amongst the many things, is that she's just as competitive as I am. And on the days where I see her competition level, maybe she's unsure about something, I remind her, like, no, you can do this. You're gonna do this. You've done this before. And so she does the same for me. So we hold each other accountable in that way, but just understanding that, like, you have to compete. And I think that's something that we've, pushed to our children, and we'll consistently push to our children, that, like, look, the world really ain't cut for somebody who doesn't want to compete, because the minute that you step out of your house, you're competing for something. Regardless of whether or not it's big or it's small, you're competing for something. So, go get it. Now, especially, and I'll flip it back to sports. I don't see a lot of competition, at least the competition that I would be involved in when it comes to sports. I think, because of technology, because of locations, because of a whole myriad of things, I think there's a generation they're a lot closer to each other. So they could never have a moment like Magic and Bird because they know everything about each other. They follow each other on social media. They hang out in the off seasons. There are a lot of athletes who train together. Like, why would I want to train with you? I mean, like, and now, with advent of technology, podcasts like this, I mean, you can literally hear other athletes get on podcasts or interviews and talk glowingly about their competition. I'm not saying nothing about my competition, not anything that they could, take with them. I'm going to tell them basically what I want you to know. I'm not going to tell you that I'm fearful of you because I'm not. And I'm not going to big you up because I don't want you to think that I think that you're great. I respect you, but no, I'm not. No, the belief is within me. I'm not worried about the outside. And so in sports, I see, and again, how can I say this? I understand, but I don't understand. Like, there's a lot of friends out here. And I think when you're friends, I just think you lose some of that competition. And I'll use two NBA players that I watch all the time, LeBron James and Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant and LeBron James, they appear to have a very, very solid friendship outside of basketball. But they don't play on the same team. So, like, I wouldn't want to be friends with you if we didn't play on the same team. And again, I know that's an old way of thinking and, an old head, I guess. Well, you can call me old head if you want, I don't care. But no, why would I want to train with you, LeBron? I'm Kevin Durant. You're a part of the competition. That you're on a team that is in my way of getting to a championship. I want to win a championship. You're in the way. Why would I be training with you? Why would I be kicking it with you? I got 15 other teammates. That makes sense to me. Now, after we're done playing, yeah, we can be cool. Because I think, going back to the Bird and Magic story, I think Bird and Magic really got to be cool, particularly as they were at the end of their careers. And then, of course, if you follow history, Magic retired in 1991 after contracting HIV. And I think, I remember Magic saying that Bird was one of the first people that he called. And for him to do that, that says a lot because that lets me know like they had or have a very good relationship at that particular point. Now, if this had happened in 1984 or 85, is Magic calling Bird and let him know he got HIV? No, he's not calling Bird because he wasn't kicking it with Bird like that. But in 91, they were in a different space. And partly because of the time that they spent shooting that commercial, getting to know each other. And I think their level of competition towards each other probably took a few steps down. It happens. But yeah, it's just too many friends. And then, I mean, like, and this is the last point I'll make as far as sports is concerned. Like, you see guys and then the games swapping jerseys. That's a popular thing. Hey, we just spent the last 2 hours playing basketball against each other. Or we just spent the last 3 hours playing football against each other. Hey, let's swap jerseys. I autograph your jersey, you autograph mine. For who? For what? I giving you my jersey. We're not that cool. We ain't that fly. I mean, again, that's a sign of the time. Allow me to be the old man on the hill. We're not swapping jerseys. Because we're not fly like that. You're the competition. And, you can say what you want, but I mean, Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. Kobe didn't have a lot of friends. Hell, Kobe didn't even have a lot of friends on his team, let alone the people he played against. Now, they had mutual respect for Kobe, and Kobe respected them, but you think Kobe was going hanging out with Allen Iverson to go get a beer? No, that was competition. And AI understood that, and he saw Kobe as such as well. Now, I'm sure they got to be real fly after they retired, but No, he's in the way. I just think like you can't be scared of competition. I just think like you have to understand that no matter what you do for a living, no matter where you're going, there's always going to be some level of competition, and you can't be scared of a little competition. You actually should run toward it because it's going to put you in a level and in a zone where you're not comfortable. And that zone is okay to be in. It's okay to be uncomfortable. But what you can't be is you can't be someone who is afraid of competition because competition is around you. And for those who aren't willing to compete, they're going to fall by the wayside. And if you fall by the wayside, nobody's going to care. And the only thing they're going to say is, well, it was up for competition and they didn't show up. And that's all they're going to say about you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. The podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. From time to time, we drop bonus episodes on Sundays at midnight. If you're on social media, follow me on Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at 12 Kyle. You can also follow the podcast at 12 Kyle Podcast. The podcast has its own exclusive page on TikTok at 12 Kyle Podcast. Again, you can follow us if you want to donate any money to the podcast. Hit us up on Cash App $TWELVEKYLE. And something new we've added. If you go to the Linktree link, you can click for merch and get yourself any type of 12 Kyle podcast merchandise. So do that. That's going to do it for me. I am your boy 12 Kyle, and I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.